So everyone, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for what promises to be an excellent and exciting discussion with 5 distinguished panelists. Our panelists this afternoon are STEM women who were selected to become ambassadors for their work and their passion to inspire the next generation of STEM leaders. In 2019, I'm going to advance the slide here. The If Then Initiative, in partnership with the American Association for the Advancement of Science, named 125 If Then ambassadors, comprising of female STEM professionals from numerous industries to serve as high-profile role models for girls and young women. The achievements of these ambassadors were showcased on a national platform in various ways, including a unique traveling exhibit consisting of these life-size 3D printed statues of the ambassadors, which were displayed in various locations in the country, including most recently at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington this past March, and at NorthPark Mall here in Dallas. 15 of these statues are right now on display at Pegasus Park in Dallas, and that comprises all the women you see here, as well as other women who have connections to North Texas. What was really fascinating about this exhibit is that previous to this, only 10% of public outdoor sculptures in the United States were of women. And I'm sure they'll all share their opinions on this in a minute. So I'm going to talk about each panelist briefly, and then we'll open the floor for some questions and have a discussion. So we're in the wrong order, yeah. You have a big picture of you in case. So our first panelist I'm introducing is Jennifer Makins. Jen Makin is Director of STEM Education at Parish Episcopal School in Dallas. And as Director of STEM Education, she's the architect and steward of the school's nationally recognized STEM program and the Executive Director of the Maker Play, an educational service outreach program that brings STEM activities to children facing extended hospital stays. Additionally, she's a member of the coaching team for the school's award-winning NASA Human Exploration Rover Challenge team, which also received the Neil Armstrong Best Design Award. Her 16 years as a STEM educator have led to impacts at both national and regional levels. While at NASA, Jen led the development of engineering challenges and teacher professional workshops. At home in Dallas, Jen consults for schools seeking to establish STEM programs and is a fixture of the first LEGO League robotics community. Jen holds a Master's of Arts in International Science Technology Policy from George Washington University and a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology from Texas A&M University. Let's all welcome Jen. The next panelist I'll introduce is Julie Mirpuri. Julie is a physician, scientist, neonatologist, and is a physician and associate professor at UT Southwestern Medical Center. As a doctor and a scientist, Julie has dedicated her life to saving newborn babies. As a board-certified pediatrician, Julie underwent advanced training to specialize in neonatal care, and as a scientist, she studies immune cells and how they interact with bacteria. She's authored several original research publications and has received awards in recognition of her contributions to neonatal research. Julie believes the key to preventing diseases in babies lies in their poop. I think those were her words. By studying how newborn babies become colonized with bacteria, she hopes to be able to manipulate these microbiomes to protect them from developing disease. Julie trained in neonatology at Emory University in Atlanta. Welcome, Julie. Our next panelist is Danielle Robertson from UT Southwestern. Dr. Danielle Robertson is an internationally recognized vision scientist and clinician. Now as an associate professor, she has spent the last 15 years of her career ascending the ranks at UT Southwestern Medical Center as the only woman investigator in the Department of Ophthalmology. From her experiences, she knows firsthand how important it is to promote young girls and women to enter into science and the healthcare fields. Dr. Robertson received her Bachelor's of Science degree from Washington State University and holds a doctorate in optometry and a PhD in physiological optics and vision science from the University of Houston. She's the only optometrist in the country to have ever received the prestigious Career Development Award from Research to Prevent Blindness. Wow. She writes and lectures extensively on multiple topics that pertain to eye health, including diabetes, autoimmune diseases, dry eye, and contact lens-related infections. Welcome, Danielle. Our next panelist is Jennifer Stimpson. For 2 decades, Dr. Jennifer Stimpson has served as a science teacher and community volunteer who blends science with substance and style. Jennifer currently teaches middle school science at the Hockaday School. Dr. Stimpson was a former federal forensic chemist working for the Drug Enforcement Administration to solve federal crimes. When she realized the need to support science programming in public schools, Jennifer became a science teacher. She adheres to the philosophy that teachers inspire students to become active, lifelong learners. Her global vision to advance science literacy for middle school girls reflects her community, civic, and public missions and advocacy to promote justice in science education. Dr. Simpson serves on the STEM Advisory Board for the Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas, and she holds membership in the American Educational Research Association, Dallas Summit, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the Lynx, the National Science Teacher Association, and Leadership Texas. Welcome, Jennifer. So mathematician and 2016 Ford legendary woman, Minerva Cordero is a professor in the mathematics department and a senior associate dean in the College of Science here at UT Arlington. She's a renowned researcher in the area of finite geometrics and has presented her research at numerous national and international conferences. She describes her research as creating the building blocks necessary to develop secure encrypting mechanisms. Her teaching career spans 25 years, and her passion and excellence in the classroom have been recognized by several prestigious teaching awards. She is equally passionate about increasing the number of women and underrepresented minorities in math and science. This past February, Dr. Cordero was one of 12 individuals selected by President Biden to receive the Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Math, and Engineering Mentoring Award. Welcome, Minerva. So to kick off the panel, I'll start with the first question to get everybody going, and then I will come around with the mic and we can have a nice discussion. So the first question would be, and all the questions that you guys ask can be to the whole panel or to any individual panelist. But the first question I'm going to ask to anybody who wants to answer it is, how does it feel to have a statue of yourself? And what do you think is the impact of this display? How many times have you been asked that? Sorry. So the mics, I'm going to unmute.
Oh, Jen? Oh. I don't think so.
She's the teacher. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, you can go, Jen.
Oh, here we go. Yep, there we are. It's odd. It's very cool. I will definitely say that, but it's very odd. Most statues are reserved for people who are no longer here. Maybe a few legendary sports icons that are. So it's very, like I said, odd but cool. I remember seeing my statue for the first time at NorthPark in person. I have a lot of students. My statue was at a pop-up at Love Field for a period of time, and so I have this collection of photos of all my students who were traveling right as we were beginning to be able to travel again, right out of COVID, who would see me at Love Field. I was right at the top of the escalators. You came up from security, and so I'd get families texting me photos of them with me. So that was fun to have, but then to be at NorthPark and walk in, and I just remember like giggling with excitement. And same when we were at the Smithsonian. It's one thing to then have I may have jumped ahead a question. It's one thing to have a statue, but then to have your statue be at the Smithsonian is also out of this world, and a bit odd. But that's my take. Anybody else?
I'll take it. I think the whole experience has been a bit surreal. Yes, when Jen started to talk, I immediately got goosebumps. And I got those same goosebumps the very first day they got us all together and announced the statue exhibit. So we didn't even know when we applied that was going to be a part of it. And so for a long time, we all just kind of it just kind of percolated on what's this going to look like. And unfortunately, it was delayed with COVID. And then when it came out, we all went up to NorthPark. It was amazing. And then to have it go up to the Smithsonian, we actually had a Meet the Scientist afternoon where we all stood by our statues. And the number of people, and not just kids, but adults too, that came by and just wanted to talk to you and hear what you had to say about your field and, get career advice and how did you make your pathway. It was an absolutely amazing experience, and I can't even begin to quantify the amount of lives we touched that day. It's immeasurable.
I can ask her, I'll answer now.
Okay. Laura, do you want one more? I just wanted to say a few things. Yeah, and for me personally, I come from a very humble background. I grew up in Puerto Rico with parents that didn't go to college, and that unfortunately I lost them before I could even graduate with my PhD. So throughout my career, I've been doing lots of things and always hoping and expecting and somehow knowing that they're very proud of me, especially my mother, who was the strongest supporter of education. So when I saw my statue, my first thought was like, is this good enough? Did I make it? We have a question. Do you want to pass this mic?
I can try. Why
Does that
don't
one
you
work?
guys use this
This
mic
one
and
works.
pass that one?
This one works. This one works now.
This in the middle?
Do you want me to?
I can be loud, but I'll use the mic. Well, congratulations to all of you. It's just really inspiring to be part of this. I guess my question has to do with how did this change you? And so did it change what your future plans are, or did it inspire you differently, or what's next for you?
That's a great question. And I think that the answer to that really comes from my heart because it changed me a lot. Being in medicine and in research, sometimes you can be very insular within your own institution. And the reason I joined this program was because I wanted to reach out. I wanted to be in the community. And I wanted to have an impact on young people that because I didn't see many female role models. And I wanted to be able to do that. And as I've gone through this path and, the mission of if she can see it, then she can be it, that has spoken so much volumes to me because now I notice things. When I walk through my own campus, I'm like, wow, there are no women on the walls. There's no statue of a woman. Like, how are the girls gonna see all the women on campus? I had to struggle when I went and applied for jobs to find a female mentor. And so now it's really changed me because I really feel that as ambassadors, we now have an obligation to keep up that momentum and keep noticing where are the women, where's the inspiration, where's the diversity. And so for me personally, it's changed me a lot, and I spend a larger proportion of my time trying to change things on my campus and wherever else I can. So that's one of the biggest ways it's changed me.
And for me, I teach middle school kids, and so I have the door open to inspire them for the next generation. What the exhibit has done for me is that it opened up the reality that there's so much more than being a scientist. It's just being a doctor or wearing a white lab coat. It exposed the diversity of the multitude of different fields of science. And so now when students come to me and say, oh, I want to be a scientist, I can say, well, what do you want to be? An engineer. Well, what kind of engineer do you want to be? And so those opportunities now exist because of this exhibit. So you're not just a researcher. You can articulate exactly which kind of researcher you want to be because there is a female statue for that. So your question about how has this changed, as a middle school teacher, I have a huge sense of responsibility, much like what Julie just mentioned, because kids will see me and say, hey, I want to be this. So now I have a responsibility to open up that door to inspire them to think about their lives in a very different way. So it's elevated my responsibility and my visibility because I walk through the campus and the kids are like, oh my God, it's Dr. J, she has a statue. More than a celebrity celebrity, because when you're a 10-year-old and the 10-year-old thinks you're cool, then you are a celebrity. But that's just more gravitas of responsibility that I have, to make sure that they can get to become the first PhD in their family, or to get to become the woman on the wall at their physician, or to get the renowned award of being the first and only in a state. So that's a sense of responsibility that I bring to, that I feel that this exhibit has done. Oh, I'm sorry.
So I still have to say this. I'm a teacher. Like, I am. What is interesting to me, and I don't know if you feel this or not. So I'm not speaking for we're the two K-12 teachers of the 125, and so my philosophy, or not my philosophy, just the experience for me has been, what in the world did I do to be amongst this class of women? Because, and I'm not trying to. And I think we're all educators in the room, most of us, in some way. So please don't hear me that I'm putting down educators. The purpose of the group is exactly what Julie said. If they can see it, they can be it. Children grow up with me, and they grow up with Jen, and you guys are different. You're different kind of educators. Is the way, like, we were talking about microbiomes in the gut and things, and I was like, wait a minute, I have to stop and listen really hard when these ladies talk. So I'm just honored. I'm honored to be in the group, and I've had my colleagues give me a hard time because I've referred to myself as like the B list of the group. Again, because children grow up with teachers, so. I have found myself, and as a teacher, as somebody who, I started in summer camp, I started in outdoor education, I didn't start at NASA, I didn't start at any of these things, and so you ask, like, what's next? I have no idea. Because 2 years ago, I never imagined having a statue, if I'm being perfectly honest. If you do some deeper background or were to see my resume, like, I have some students, they got to give a TEDx talk back in 2016, I think. I didn't go into teaching imagining having students give a TEDx talk. So the fact that my likeness was a statue at the Smithsonian, I don't know what to do next. I think I've been doing reading. I coach a lot with my NASA team. I study not so much the engineering aspects of that, but the coaching aspects of it. And I kind of equate it to, I feel a lot like you do the research about the Olympians who they spend all their lives trying to win a gold medal. I wasn't trying to win a gold medal, but now I feel like I've won a gold medal and I don't know what the heck to do next. So, but I'm having a lot of fun because invitations like this are dropping, they're not flooding in, but they're dropping into my inbox, and that's fun. It's fun to come hang out with these ladies.
Okay. Yeah, I want to add something. So first of all, Jen, there is no B team here. So, I have to say that one of, unique things about this program, yes, we're all very diverse. Yes, I think we've all kind of been enlightened about the field of science, and the careers are out there. I grew up in a small town. I had no idea some of the things that women can do, and then I met these women, and it just absolutely blew me away. And I've learned really cool things through this program. Like, I learned sharks, when they bite your limb off when you're surfing in your wetsuit, they think you're a seal, but they actually don't like the way you taste, so they spit you out. I just don't think that's fair. I learned a lot about poop today, and a very interesting fact from Julie about the president. But, our diversity aside, I think, and this is why I say there's no B team, one of the things that was so cool and amazing about this experience, and I'm curious if y'all felt the same, but when we were all brought together for the first time from all our different backgrounds, all our different experiences, I've never seen so many women in one room bond so quickly. And the reason we bonded wasn't just because we have a passion to be role models and to go out there and inspire young girls, but we all bonded because we all had a story, and that story included being told at some point along our career path that we couldn't do it because we were women. And I think to sit in a room where almost every woman had that same story, it was moving, yet tragic at the same time. So we're wanting to change that paradigm.
So ladies, first, congratulations. You're such an inspiration for all of us. And my question is a little longer with a little prehistory. So I have a lot of kids and I've watched a lot of Disney shows with them. And my absolute favorite is Mulan because it is about the success of a woman who everybody thought was just a woman and she just conquered the world. So one of the lines in this movie was that the most beautiful flower is the one that blossoms in the time of adversity. So I want to ask each one of you, what adversity did you overcome to become who you are and be where you are right now?
So pick an adversity, any adversity. So for me, obviously, when I graduated from graduate school, I was the first woman of color, more specifically African-American woman to graduate with a degree in science from where I graduated from graduate school. And so opening that door was, an interesting adversity. So also the adversity that I faced besides the racial, significance of who I am, it was this idea that when I was teaching in a different kind of school setting, I used to teach in public school and then I moved into an independent school space. And that another adversity that I experienced was the difference in how students learn from public school to private schools. So it's almost like if kids go to one type of school, that going to another type, that idea of being better than or different, I had to fight that because as a teacher, my responsibility is to make sure that kids do their homework and that they are learning. And it doesn't matter where I taught, it's still that responsibility. But when you are faced with adversity, the resilience that you have to have comes from something that's inside. You have people around you that instill all of this, but you still have to go out there and fight and be your best self because you're going to be faced with something, and that is how do you overcome what you've done? And that is your self-reflection, that is your personal mantras, that is your allies, your support system, because those people pour into you and you need that when you are faced with difficulties. And all of us have faced that. Everybody's story is going to be a little different, but my personal adversity has just been using my voice and seeing my voice as something that's as an expert or someone who knows what she's talking about and being recognized in the space and having the science identity that I have. I know what I'm talking about, but so often people dismiss that because I don't represent what an ideal scientist looks like. So until we demystify who a scientist is, then we will always face these adversities. But it's just that resilience of going over and moving on and keeping going that keeps me going.
Okay, so I think for me, my career path was very bumpy. I had no clear trajectory. I grew up in a very small town up in Washington State. I remember when I flew home from Texas one time and there was a McDonald's and I discovered this as it was in the middle of a snowstorm and I hit the brakes when my brother pointed out we now had a stoplight. And they had to put one in because we now had a McDonald's. It was quite exciting. But so I had kind of a bumpy path, and along the way, there have been definitely some great successes, but there's also been some failures. And I think for me, learning to take failure and turn it around and realize this isn't a wall, it's not even a speed bump, but a stepping stone to get to the next place and where I was meant to be. And I think there you go through times in your career at all levels where you have to learn to push through these times, whether it's family or work or whatever that level of failure is, but you have to learn to deal with the negative and dig deep down inside yourself and know who you are and push yourself forward.
So I think for me, the biggest adversity I've had to go through was how I was programmed. growing up in a very conservative culture, I was told the best thing I could do was marry a good man, and that he would take care of me, and all my education. There was a friend of mine's father, when I said, I was going to medical school, said, "Why do you want to do that? Nobody's going to marry you. You need to learn how to cook and clean." And so for years and years, this programming of what I should do and what was valued in society. And I had to constantly fight that. Fortunately, my parents didn't completely believe in that. But as I've grown up and gone through my career, even now I sometimes have to think back at what I think about myself and remember, wait, this is the programming of a culture and what people have said to me before, and this is not right. I deserve this. I can't do this. I think we all have that. We all have imposter syndrome. But it keeps coming up for all of us, and definitely for me, and I have to keep reminding myself that despite this programming, it's different. I can do this, and I can keep moving forward.
I think my biggest adversity was just settling into myself. I'm Dallas born and raised, independent school, born and raised. So lots of opportunity, but I think just trying to figure out, I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I knew I didn't want to do a variety of things. So I can remember the door closing at Texas A&M, the door shut, and it's like, okay, here I am, now what? So it took a while to settle into an initial career path, and then to know that it was okay to change was a big thing. And then that I think was the biggest, finding a place to start and then being willing to fail was an aspect for me. So, but interestingly enough, good things happen when you fail and keep going. So, anyway.
Yes, I'm thinking about my trajectory. I don't know that I would call it bad situations, but it just happened when I came to the United States. I grew up in Puerto Rico speaking Spanish. My classmates, everyone was Hispanic, so I did not feel different than anybody else. And actually, I was doing pretty good in school, so I grew up thinking, yeah, I'm the best, and I know everything that is there to be known. And then I come to the United States, University of California, Berkeley, Hispanic woman with an accent, and people start looking at me, and somehow I'm talking and I see sense of disbelief. How could she know math? She's Hispanic, she's a woman. And so that took some getting used to. And luckily for me, I'm a very kind of oblivious person. I don't really care much about what people think or say about me, and I think it's definitely a blessing. But realizing then, as I'm meeting other women and other Latinos and Latinas that are having these issues, is like, well, this is something that we definitely need to learn how to overcome. And women. So when we were at the Smithsonian Museum and we had many young girls come and talk to me, I will just try to find in them what was their superpower. And if they could add 2 + 2 just like that, you have the math superpower. You can do anything you want. To start creating and changing those tapes and that things that have been telling women all along, women cannot do math. And I'm going to share a quick little story here from my own son when he was 10 years old in 3rd grade. And in his classes, they divided the high math and the low math. And he comes home telling us about who is his high math class, and he's mentioning all of these boys, all of his friends. And I said, what about girls? How many girls are there in the high math? And he mentioned 2 out of 22. And I said, well, why is that? Why there's no more girls in the high class? And my son, 10 years old, telling me, Mom, because everybody knows that girls cannot do math. Oh, everybody knows that. So again, this process of learning about the stereotypes and what are things that women have been somehow kept away from, and this belief that women can not do this thing is something that I have been learning gradually, and that now being in the If-Then exhibit and being part of this group of women, I feel like you were mentioning before, this responsibility to open people's eyes to what women can do. young women back there that they just want to entertain them, and they back there.
So I'm curious if you guys have an if-then woman in your life, whether it was a colleague or a friend or a mentor that you had. I grew up with Girl Scouts, so it was a great organization for me to kind of learn about women leadership. And so I'm just curious if there's someone in your life that would fit that role.
One. I don't know if it's a good one or not. Do you have one? You go first.
Well, I had, when I was finishing my undergraduate studies in Puerto Rico, I knew that I loved math, and I went to undergraduate school thinking I just want to learn more math. I wasn't necessarily thinking, what job will I have? When I was finishing my senior year, one of my professors, my algebra teacher, this amazing woman talked to me, and she told me, why don't you get a PhD in mathematics? This is the first time I've heard anyone talk to me that way. I admire her and her passion for what she was doing. And just those words that she said to me that day completely changed my trajectory and my life. So she would have been my if-then moment, right? If you motivate a woman, if you tell someone this is a possibility for you, then, right, you might have a chance that she will do that.
So I have some if-then women from like how to be a good teacher. Definitely some there. I think as I think about my life, I didn't have anybody say, Jen, go be a teacher, go be this kind of teacher. But I had strong women role models. So my mom's an accountant, has her own practice. I have an aunt who was in banking. So just some, but more than anything, they were, I think, kind of just some that. I don't know that they're old enough to be the glass ceiling of women in the corporate world, but they were maybe the generation right after that. So it was just how to be an independent, strong woman. But I also grew up admiring. So I was the kid who always wanted to be an astronaut. I have a rejection letter from NASA. I had that in my talk at the Smithsonian on the screen. It was really big. It was kind of fun because I don't have a qualifying bachelor's degree. But anyway, that aside, my role model growing up was Krista McAuliffe. So what I took from her, and I had the distinct pleasure a couple of times in my life of meeting her mother. It was very strange to meet your like role model's mother. But scouting was big in their lives. But what I took from her story was just to not be afraid to go after something that's important to you and then it's deep in your heart, and to just live and be a good human. So, Julie, what you got? Oh, you're gonna, okay.
For me, it was my brother has special needs, and when I was growing up, my mom had to take him to a lot of different doctor's appointments. And there was always this one doctor my mom raved about, Dr. Veronica Wang. Oh, she's amazing. She's so good with your brother. You have to meet her. And we went one day and she brought me, I was really young, maybe 5, 6 years old. And I met her and I saw how good a physician she was, how well she treated my brother, how well she treated my mom, how much my mom like admired her. And I'm like, oh, wow, like, I want to be like that, you know? And ironically, when I went to medical school, she was one of my professors. And I actually got a chance to tell her that story. I'm like, hey, you know, long time ago, I met you and you inspired me. So that was definitely my if-then person.
I don't think I have one if-then person. Like, I look back and I think about where I am. I didn't have any female role models when I was growing up. I didn't know a female physician or scientist. My parents didn't want me to go to college. My parents wanted me to go to the local community college and become like an x-ray technician or maybe a nurse and have kids. My mom kept saying, you don't want to go to medical school. Well, you won't have time for a family. And that's not what I want for you. And if it wasn't for my high school physics teacher, Mr. Wickholm, who went in and actually spoke to my parents, they owned a local business in our hometown, and told them that if they didn't send me away to college, if they didn't send me to college, then it was going to be the biggest mistake of their life and mine. And so they finally agreed to let me apply to a state school, and off I went. And I look all along the way. I took a year off after college to decide, science, medicine, where do I need to go? And I wanted to live in a big city. And I ended up working in an eye clinic, which launched me to optometry school. And there was a professor there who saw something in me and got me engaged in research. And then when I decided to do a PhD, I was actually planning on going down to Sydney to the University of New South Wales because they had a clinical research unit down there that's famous for its contact lens work and development. And in the meantime, my professor in optometry school said, no, I don't think that's the right spot for you. And he introduced me to the vice chair of ophthalmology at UT Southwestern. And he flew me up, and I met him. And talk about an if-then moment. He sat me down and said, if you want to learn science, then you're going to come here. And I did. And he is now Professor Emeritus, and I am now the first female professor of ophthalmology at UT Southwestern.
Like many of them, I also didn't have an immediate female role model. I mean, I grew up with both my parents, and both my parents were pharmacists, so not too many people can say that they worked in a house full of drug dealers. My dad had his own business, and my mom worked in a clinical pharmacy, and that was a joke, but yeah. So my first role model was actually my father, and even though he's obviously not a female, he inspired me to think about going further and going more and taking the hard classes and moving forward. So I didn't grow up with an identity of like, you're a girl, you cannot do it. I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with, if it's hard, you've got to keep going. Hard things are hard. So if you're the only girl, that's a hard thing. You got to keep going. If you're the only person of color, it's a hard thing. You got to keep going. If you're only left-handed in a room full of right-handed people, that's something hard. You got to keep going. So for me, my role model was just looking at the people who were in my life and what they were doing. And if there was anyone that I could call on, it would be my dad. He owned his own business for 34 years, and he used science to help the people in his community learn more about how to take care of their health by imparting science knowledge, and not just coming to pick up your prescription, but maybe changing the way your diet, maybe what you're eating, or maybe you can do different things. So he inspired them, which is a public service that he instilled in me. And so he was my first role model so that I could become the female role model to so many girls who look up to me. I have a question for the audience.
Anybody else?
You guys
I'm left-handed too. I'm left-handed as well.
I'm not. I just used that. I thought I wanted to be growing up.
So beyond like just inspiring young girls and like the impact that you have on them, what do you feel about the benefit or the impact of being female role models on young boys?
So can you hold the mic closer
Oh, yeah, of course,
to
of
your,
course.
yes, no, can you say that again? We did not hear
Yeah.
you.
So beyond just the impact of being
Too far.
female role models on young girls, what do you feel about like the impact or benefit it would be like being a female role model for young boys?
So I think Dr. Mirpuri and I both are going to have some comments on that. So I have a son, he's 12 and a half, and I love being his mom and role model because I can guarantee that my son will never question if a woman's good at math or if a woman's good at science. And he actually comes to me for help on those topics. And I absolutely love it. And I think one of the biggest things in changing is this culture shift. And I was just talking to someone before this program today, is that young girls need to see themselves in the role models that are out there. They need to see the opportunities that are out there for them and have that confidence instilled that they can do it. But at the same token, it's just as important as boys see us as well, because we need to change the paradigm, and young boys need to grow up with the mentality that women can do it too, every bit as good as they can. And I think that's what it's going to take for true equality in the workplace, to occur.
Yeah, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old boy, sons, and they look at me and they say she's a doctor and she's a scientist and girls can do anything. And my son thinks that Kamala Harris is the president. And they definitely believe in women. They have no doubt. And I have a very, very supportive husband. And so what is our role for boys and men? And I think that we need everybody at the table. It's just as important for us to inspire boys and say, we can play ball with you. And then for them to like say, yes, let's play together, right? We want equality. We want the environments to be open to both men and women. And so I try and look at that perspective as well. And I talk to as many boys, young boys, as I do young girls and try and inspire them.
Can I say that for a sec? I just have to add this little story because it's too cute, thinking about Julie and her young boys. So my husband runs his own business. He works out of the house. And when my son was younger, probably the age of your younger son, and he went to Montessori, they all sat around the classroom one day and got to say what their parents did. And when it was Peyton's turn, he stood up proudly and said, "My mom's a doctor, and my dad sits on the couch and watches TV."
That's an excellent question. And when we're trying to bring about change, which is what the Lyda Hill Philanthropy's goal is with this If-Then initiative, is to bring about a culture change where we no longer see women as not capable of pursuing careers in STEM. We have to bring everyone to the table. If only women are advocating for women, we will not make it. If only Hispanics are advocating for Hispanics, we won't make it. You need everyone at the table. And that has been very clear to us that our goal is to change the culture that see these differences in men and women. And if we want to exercise change, we have to have everyone at the table, including those young boys and not so young boys. Yes.
So at what point in your career did you stop doubting yourself and you were like, oh, I can do this, I can, pursue my dreams?
I'll let you know when it happens.
That's a great question because I think Julie mentioned the imposter syndrome, and for years, my first few years as a faculty member at UT Southwestern, and I took a beating. It was brutal. NIH grants were in the budget. I didn't sleep much. I had a new baby, and I worked all night every night, and it was horrible. And I think for me, I think I did hit that point, and I hope that everybody at this panel, if you haven't, that you hit that point. But you do transition. You come to a point in your life where you transition, and all of a sudden you kind of fit in your skin, and you're like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm part of this group, and for me that was probably. It was about early into my associate professorship, early kind of midway through. So maybe just 3 or 4 years ago. But it takes a long time. But when you get there, you know it. It's a very eye-opening experience.
Yeah, when we were at the If-Then Summit, and I had major imposter syndrome. And I'd applied for a big grant, and I really needed that to continue my research career. And in the middle of the summit, I got a score for my grant, which happened to be the 1 percentile. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And at dinner, I told somebody, I'm like, you know what? Now I deserve to be here.
You told me.
I suddenly felt like, okay, maybe now I deserve to be here, because I had such major imposter syndrome. And she gave me the best advice. She said, you know what, while external validation is nice, it doesn't change who you are and what you're worth. And I think that's so important. And I actually wrote that down, and I think of that comment very often, because we are all valuable. And while all these external things are nice, it does not change who you are and what you're worth. And you're worth a lot, and you can do a lot, and if you can have the resilience, and you can make it happen, and your big might be different from someone else's big, but we are all valuable.
So I was teasing, and So I think there's a point where, I think the question earlier was like, what's next, right? And so on one hand, I don't know what's next, but on the other hand, I just keep doing what I'm doing. Like that's, I think how you know, in part, you feel comfortable in your skin is you just, okay, this was great. I got the grant. I didn't get the grant. I'm going to keep getting better a little bit each day, figuring out those 1% changes I can make each day to keep having that pay dividends over time. But I'm going to keep showing up for my students. I'm going to keep showing up for my family. And yeah, the statue is amazing and odd all at the same time, but you just keep going because that's, I think, I guess it's when you hit that comfort point and you're comfortable in your skin, those things just start happening, right? That you didn't envision. And if you keep showing up, more good things will continue to happen as you go, has been my perspective.
So my question is, during your career, have you ever been in a situation that you think, if I were not a woman, different thing gonna be happen? Like,
That is,
I'm going to let them answer. I'm a teacher, so that doesn't happen often. But I think their stories might be a little bit more rich for what you're answering. But I do think that, as Minerva spoke about, when you have everyone at the table, then it opens up different conversations. So if we take away the gender perspective and just think about what you bring to the table in terms of a variety of different diversities, that importance of having a voice at the table is very important. So I haven't faced that in the last 10, 12 years. So I'm going to pass it on to someone who might have had some of those experiences.
I'll just say that I couldn't even begin to list how many times I've had that conversation. So it's crazy, and yeah, from everything from how you dress to, I was told as a graduate student that I could not dress like a graduate student. I needed to dress like a junior faculty member because I was female. That means I had to work harder than a male. So yeah, all my whole career, I've encountered different situations. Even still today, I still deal with the respect that I see interactions with people outside of our department with some of our male faculty, and they'll refer to them as, Dr. Smith or, Dr. Jones, and then they look at the female faculty and it's, oh, hi, Danielle. Or hey, it's Dr. Kavanaugh, Dr. Petrol, and Danielle. And it's like, well, no, it's all for one and one for all here. So you deal with those things every single day. And that's why, a program like this is so important. And that's why, as women, we need to support each other every step of the way. We're going to do it together, not alone.
Yes, absolutely. If I was not a woman, I'd be more successful. That's just the truth. Okay, for many, many reasons. People look at you differently. I had babies. I went through pregnancy, and so that kind of had some delays in my career because women still have to take on a lot of the house challenges. That's just the truth. And I would probably have more grants and have more publications. But you know what? Throughout my career, every time I've noticed something that's making women transition in their career slower, I've spoken up. And so I hope for all of you, because of the women here, the other ambassadors, all the women I've met today who are speaking up for the younger generation, things will change. So one of the things, I'll give you an example, was in my institution, when you were on maternity leave, you did not get any protection for your clinical work. And so I had to do the same amount of clinical time, but my lab research suffered. But for promotion, I was judged on my research output solely. And so I clearly saw that was one of the reasons why my promotion was delayed. And I spoke up, I went to the chair, I went as high as I could, and that's changed now. And so anyone after me has a different path. And so while, yes, my career would have been more successful if I was a man, I pray to God, and I know that there's so many people working really hard so that your path or the next person who comes in behind me will not have that delay. And that's all our responsibility. Whenever you see something, speak up and be the difference.
I've had it. I've had the Jen, you're too direct. Work on your tone. And it's like, well, okay, but there's so I've definitely had that. I've had the dressed for the job you want, not the job you have, but the job I have requires me to be in a shop space, on my hands and knees fixing equipment, repairing, cutting any sorts of material, and a lot of female attire that you might pick out at a certain, any of the, I don't know, I was shopping at Ann Taylor and Banana Republic, but any of the nice clothing, like my colleagues, they're kind of like, they melt when you're around welding equipment. Like, I don't know, what was I supposed, So yes, it's hard and it's frustrating. And I agree with Julie, you need to speak up as you can. And the sad reality is it's just, that culture is still out there in some places. And I think what I am excited about this group is, as somebody mentioned earlier, when we all got together, when we first met at the summit, we were all for each other rather than against each other. And so I think there's also out there, I've encountered not just men expecting a certain behavior, but sometimes women are our own worst enemies. Rather than extending a hand up, it's, no, there's only room for one of us at this table, so go away. And that's been a sad reality I've encountered as well.
There's definitely the stereotypes, and as I mentioned before, I'm a little bit oblivious to things, and many a times I have conversations with colleagues, and then I go home and discuss with my husband, who is another person in academia who understands the world of academia well, and many a time he goes like, I wonder if he would have said that if you had been a man. And I'm sure there's a lot of this type of microaggressions in there, but I certainly hope that everyone, especially the young people in here, continue to pursue the passions that you have, and all of us that are already there on the other side continue to inspire these young women and young men to work to get an environment that is more equitable and that is more welcoming for women. As you know, less than 30% of the workforce in STEM is women. Last time it was 29%. However, the population in the United States is 51% women. So we're certainly missing a large percentage of the population that needs to get engaged in these STEM fields. And unless we bring everyone to the table, really our country is at risk of not achieving or continuing the prominence that it has now in the world in terms of development, science, engineering development. So we definitely all need to make sure that we're creating that equitable environment where both men and women are looked at and based on their abilities, not necessarily on their gender. Dr. Miller, did you want to have a closing word? Does anyone else wants to add? Okay.
Just one quick question. Just to add what you were saying. There's really never been a better time for women to pursue STEM careers. So while the workforce is still slightly skewed, I will tell you that for professional schools, optometry school, dental school, medical school, we're seeing about 50-50% of men and women now. So this is your time, ladies. You do not be afraid. Don't be afraid of failure or what happens if I don't get in. If there's a passion out there, figure out how to make it happen. Reach out, talk to women, that are in those fields, because your time is now.
What do you think the biggest problems will be for the future generation of female doctors, scientists, educators?
Well, I think that one of the
Can you repeat the question? I think, I'm going to give you guys this mic too. We'll just repeat it, right?
Well, I think it was, what challenges do you think future generations are going to face in the field of science? Or I think that's what you were saying. One of the biggest challenges that, I think is still going to be a little bit of this diversity challenge. Like, how can you continue to perpetuate this idea that your voice needs to be part of the table? So that's going to still be there. But in the classroom, I'm seeing this computational challenge. So one of the things that's happened is COVID. We all know that. So so some of the students have lost the opportunity to practice math on a regular basis. So all my mathematicians out there, find you a kid, mentor that kid, tutor that kid, because math opens up a different doors, and I'm sure that the bookend, Minerva will tell you, math is going to be, is the gateway. So what's hugely important, I think, is going to be perpetuating this access to math and practicing and utilizing math skills that have been lost during this particular time. So for future generations, it's how well are you going to be able to computationalize so many things so that we can continue to use math in society. And that's really a big deal that I see coming in from the classroom.
The two teachers. I think along the lines of the diversity, I think it's the humanity. Seeing everybody as a human with an experience. I think we've gotten away from that in our country and on the global stage, just from the different things that are going on. And I think we need to get back to everybody's got a perspective. Their perspective is not going to be 100% the same as mine, the lens through which we view the world. There are, I have privileges that other people don't that sit at this table. They have privileges I don't. And that's not a bad thing. That brings, that's what Minerva was saying, that the perspective, and brings, we need people of all colors and shapes and sizes and backgrounds and experiences at the table to solve the problems. Because the solution for one part of the world is not going to be the solution in the other part of the world. And if you don't understand a barrier to getting clean water or medicine or food or shelter or any of those things, education to the different parts of the world, I don't know how we're supposed to do that. I don't know how we're supposed to take care of each other. And to stop shouting at each other about those experiences being not real is been lost in not seeing that you're talking to a human. And so that's what I see is the biggest challenge, and that I think transcends just science, engineering, technology, and math, but these disciplines hold the gateway, I think, to the solutions. I also think my background, or my master's, is in science and technology policy. It's really long. It's about how to be a space nerd and talk about the engineering side of space to the politicians. Because engineering speak is not political speak, and political speak is not engineering speak, right? So to me, one of the things I'm passionate about is that these STEM disciplines need the context, they need the story behind it, they need the history, they need the economics, they need somebody to tell the story, right? They need an artist. So one of my big things is bringing corporations or fields to my kids and going, well, right, this is math is the language that drives this, but now let's go tell the story and the impact. And that gets back to a common humanity that I think is important for the future.
Yeah, this is an excellent question, and it's coming from our newer generation in here. I love the new generation. I think you kids really hold the key to changing the world, to making a better place. I see the new generation as being so much more accepted, so much more into diversity, so much more into equity. And you are the ones that are going to change the world, and you are the ones that 20, 25 years, 50 years from now will be deciding what this country is all about. So the challenge might be dealing with the previous generations do not necessarily see it the way that you do. But you have a great power in your hands. You can do so much, and you have this kind of humanitarian view that Jen was talking about the value of each individual. You see that, and I want you to hold on to that and fight for that, because that's definitely what's going to make this a way better, even better country than what it is right now. As I said at the beginning, I love the new generation. I have big faith and hope in you all.
Thank you. That's a great place to end. And thank you all for your attention and your questions.